Hey, what's up guys? Yeah, another patch is up, though this one isn't as stacked as the patch 5.5. Here's my take on it. First off, Atrox. Atrox has many problems, one of which is the lack of an identity. Is he a tank? Is he a bruiser? If he builds damage, he dies. If he builds tank, he does nothing. Fortunately, that's another story for another day. His problems is his blood well. It's hard to get a full blood well in burst, but his ultimate gets a massive buff now where he doesn't need to be in extended fights to max it out for his passive attack speed and his passive resurrection. Good for him, though his problems still remain. Amumu, just a simple bug fix where his W would stay on even if it was What a crybaby, yet he doesn't build tears. Annie, she'll probably get a real nerf someday to her stun, but she's also a champion that's easy for new players to pick up and perform on. This nerf is small, just like Tibbers. It's a direct nerf to the Sunfire effect of Tibbers. Over time the damage could add up. Early. Think of it like Victor's mini Chaos Storm, but with a bear. Bard. Here's an interesting one. People give him so much shit for being a quote-unquote garbage champion. He really isn't, because his playstyle is so different, does not make him bad. He's a team player, he sets up play for the team. Until someone makes him look good, or until people learn to play with him, he will be regarded as a trash champion, which he isn't. But they gave him some buffs to steer people in the right direction. His Q does more damage now, his E is on a relatively lower cooldown, and will be easier to click as well. And a small change, so he doesn't cockblock Barons anymore with his ultimate. Hopefully, a good Bard rises up to the challenge and will show the world how truly amazing he could do. So everyone jumps on the Bard wagon. Cassiopeia. It's a stealth nerf from last patch. It's going to affect her late game more since a 12% AP loss, as Riot puts it, is really substantial later in the game, but Cass is still strong. For Elise, some nice change on the move speed where the human form is lowered, the spider form is greatly increased. I think they should have kept the human form same move speed and increased the spider form 1. The repel change makes it easier for newer players to learn how to use it properly, and the missile speed buff on Cocoon is more than welcome. On a side note, Elise is pretty decent right now with Cinderhulk, so try it out. For Evelyn, the passive buff, I love it. It helps her create more pressure late game because of her shifting faster into her invisible status, which will also help her with the second part of her passive, which makes her mana regen faster. She still has the same problems early game regarding mana issues and lacking damage at crucial parts of the game. The W change is a more balanced change because she can have access to the reset faster and be more mobile while also losing the passive movement speed buff she used to have, which made the difference in the long run. But since we always max her W last, it doesn't make much of a difference and is overall a good buff for her. Cinderhulk Eve is pretty good. Try it out. For love of God, please give her ultimate lethal damage or change it back to max health. For Galio, this is a pretty huge buff for him. He can spam abilities better since his Righteous Gust will have a cooldown reduced by a whopping 3 seconds, and Chalice is getting buffed and Athene as well, so we might start seeing some Galio. This also means he can get his team faster around the map. For Irelia, I never really understood why people love the better nerf Irelia memes so much when other champions such as Shen, Zinjal, Yasuo, Olaf, Eve, Elise have suffered way worse fates. To prove that, yes, her last nerf was 3 years ago, and her current nerf is nothing more than a love tap. So hooray for Irelia players. Keep using that joke. It works very well if you don't want your champ nerfed. Katarina, base stats nerf really do hurt the most. This will make all-inning her, or going for extended trades stick longer. She loses 50 base health early in the game, compensated by the fact she will regain it eventually, and the regen nerf will hurt the most. Thing is though, good Katarinas will still do good, it's just the shitty ones will suffer more for it. Karthus, just an auto attack animation buff to make it feel better. Another champion who has a really bad one to compare it with would be Anivia. For Leblanc, nothing to see here, it's just small nerfs and love stab to her AP ratio of her ultimate. She'll still be good as ever, and hated as ever. Lux. Well, this is really good news for Lux. When I read that last change, it was really a good thing. I just never knew it never worked on her ultimate. Like they say, better late than never. Natalie. Nothing to see here again, guys, because of the uprising of hard engage and tank junglers, which Natalie struggles against. But Natalie will reach, or if she hasn't already, reached the status of Sion of being a really impressive early game jungler. And fuck her, I really hope she gets nerfed to the ground. Nocturne. Holy Mother of God. A Nocturne buff. The reduced cooldown from 180 seconds to 150 seconds is huge. You can squeeze more reliable ganks in at early stages of the game and can potentially make a little comeback in the game. With the plethora of really good junglers to play, this will give Nocturne the power needed to compete with the others. Quinn. A lot of quality of life buffs to her E, which are honestly my favorite types of buff. Will be more responsive and easier to perform trick jumps. The auto attack reset attached to it will now improve her trades and duels. Rammus, still a shadow of his former self because of the cooldown nerfs on Powerball before the Season 5 jungle changes, the small mana buff to his Q should ever so slightly steer him into a good light. Otherwise, there are a lot better tank junglers available to play, but Rammus has a special niche where he can force an ADC to kill themselves. Literally. Rise. Ooh, they are reverting some of the base Q damage a little bit. Will this make him rise to the occasion or show up in the meta? Find out next time on the next episode of Dragon Patch Notes. Suwanee. I don't give a fuck. Can't say I didn't see this one coming. What surprises me the most? This is more of a love tap than obliterating her entire existence, which I find really cool from Riot to do. A small decrease in the percent damage part of her W, and punishing people more for missing her ultimate. This is a really good change without tanking too much from her actual power, which is stacking health, being tanky, and doing a shit ton of damage. Singed. A change to his E which resulted in a buff but now deals percent health damage instead of always flat. Peeling high health targets from your carries will actually do a lot more damage to them than before, and damage to squishies should stay relatively the same, if not more depending on the stage of the game. Sion. The damage to monsters has been nerfed from his Q, which is understandable since they buffed the damage last patch and this time they nerfed the bonus damage from 50% to 30% on his E. I think it's a pretty big nerf, no doubt, making his overall laning easier to deal against. The thing is, Sion will still be good. He just went from godlike to a demigod. Overall, it's okay changes because his base damage were already high, and they are still high. Twitch. His passive damage went up by 1 early in the game, no biggie. It's not gonna do much except make him feel that his passive actually does something early. Vigar. Vinegar. A small buff to his passive so he can spam a bit more his Q and farm that AP easier. Range on his Q increased by quite a bit, and his E now cock blocks any dashing abilities. It's pretty okay, but his problems still remain. A cool thing they could do is maybe make his landing his W not so reliant on landing his stun. Vel'Koz. Nothing to see here again, just a real specific interaction with Thresh's Lantern. Yorick. Holy shit, a Yorick buff. It's a good quality of life change because it's basically the same buff Mord received 2 patches ago. The extra range will help it land it more reliably. Ziggs. These mana chains will help Zig so much, like they reduced the cost by 20 at level 5. To mana users, these kinds of changes are a godsend. Maybe he will be able to compete with Xerath now. Zelandra. For some reason, Zelandra received buffs on everything. I think it's just cause people are really bad with him and need some help adjusting to him. The ratio on his Q is back to what it originally was. The mana cost is reduced by 20 at the max rank. His W level 1 cooldown is now 4 seconds shorter, which further directs his skill build, making his W a good 1 wonder skill, and lowering the mana cost by 15. His E, the mana cost is reduced by 50, well, reduced to 50 to be exact, at all levels, making a buff of 20 mana at max rank. What this means for Zelandra is he can spam his abilities better without having to be gated by his mana so much. Please, 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 someone play support Zelandra. Holy shit, it is so bon, it is good and delicious. Chalice. They are reducing the cost, thank God. Now people won't feel too bad building it, and it will make Athene a more attractive option than Morello all the time. Athene. The mana regen is going up from 50% to 100%, and a bigger change, you now gain double the mana from 15% to 30% for kills and assists. Any champion who builds it will have enough mana to do everything, because 30% of your mana is large. The Rift Scuttler. I don't fucking know why they are calling this shit a bug, because when the Scuttler came out, it was the range where it is at the moment. For the longest time, like the 525 range, that's what it started at. And then, suddenly it became fucking huge, for just as long as it has been that small range. This is a big change because now securing Scuttler only guarantees an easier time taking objectives, and not as much with vision control. Certain junglers adopted this playstyle of taking a crab whenever it was up to have better vision control. Now it is more oriented towards the objective control. In short, the vision of the crab just reverted to back where it originally was. Jungle EXP change. This change, I think, is more for competitive. I have never felt behind or felt like I was underleveled in any of my games as a jungler, because the increased experience at level 11, which is 10%, is huge. This will make it so competitive junglers don't fall behind too much, and right now it's just going to make solo queue junglers stronger overall. Well, might as well take the buff before they serve me the next nerfs. Alright, that's about it. That was my take on the patch 5.6. Check out my guides and hope to see y'all next time. Ciao ciao!